A love of the outdoors is far from exclusive to the hunting community. Tonight, braving the constant storms of March, we're going to spend some time in nature with Martin, a man who is very much in touch with the natural world.
So out here today with Martin. We say a lot as hunters we're very much connected with nature, but there is not somebody who is more connected with nature than this man right here.
Thank you.
So Martin, what are we going to do today?
So we're going to do a little bit of foraging. We're going to get some food. We're going to do some connection activities with the natural world, and just be out here, have a fire, spend some night under the trees in the ancient oaks, and then just be.
So what's first?
We're going to have to get rid of those boots.
Right, so why am I doing this?
Okay, so first of all, you don't have to. It's a choice I decided after leaving the forces as a medic and seeing lots of busted ankles, knees and hips and backs. I thought, like, why is everyone having all these hips and knee problems as like 30-year-old people? Surely this is not how we're meant to be. And I looked across the whole world and looked at what people did before, and the answer was wear no shoes, or wear shoes that are made custom for them, that are made out of a very pliable material. So I just think it's a really simple way to connect to nature, increase your foot health, and generally you start to feel a different connection, I think, to the forest. It makes you move a bit slower and observe the space. There's so many different ways that it helps you as a human connect to your wildness and generally improve your overall health.
All right, now I'm out of these lovely insulated boots and I feel the cold of the earth on my feet. I'm not going to say I feel connected yet. Let's wait a bit.
Okay, let's go down this path with all the nice leaves on it. That'll be a good first experience.
Am I supposed to walk differently?
Okay, so I find you can walk just normally, but you can, if you walk like a fox, it's called fox walking. You want to land on the front pad of your foot.
It's a very dirty word in our community, mate.
Let's call it wolf walking.
That's better.
Okay, you just slowly will increase your proprioception. You'll find it sort of natural. Initially it'll feel a bit weird, but it helps your body feel out for sort of rolls in the ground, abnormalities, and you'll gain what's called proprioception, which is the feeling through your feet.
Do you stop feeling the cold at any point?
Yes.
Good.
I think it takes about 20 minutes on a cold day for your body to acclimatise, and you'll still be able to feel everything, but it will negate that feeling of cold. It's just a small amount of adversity, I think, also helps us connect things. We have so much comfort in our modern lives, this little bit of adversity to go through just, I think, is something else that sort of really helps connect us to the broader world, because everything is so rounded edges, and this little bit of adversity, getting your feet used to the cold, just really can help you grow. See? Loads of poo.
A deer poo.
So where are we staying tonight? We could stay in a beautiful natural shelter, but I thought nice and easy tonight, comfortable, large tent that's well insulated. Yumi and Sash in here, big old fire outside, roast meat. So I'm just going to do a few more little preps to make this a bit more homely, and going to cut some spruce boughs to prepare the entranceway in a way that I've seen done in Sweden.
We set up the fire and went out to forage some bits for dinner. And then settled in as the weather came in to discuss what similarities we had. Come morning time, the rain had cleared up and we had an opportunity to film. We sat around the breakfast fire, cooking food and making great conversation.
So, you've been in the woods now for a good sort of 12 hours. We've done some foraging, been by the fire. We got you barefoot, even though, you know.
I was barefoot all last night.
The whole last night. How did it feel?
Oh, mate, it felt great.
It's good, man.
But
It's a
it
bit-
was very cold this morning, so I'm back in boots.
Totally understand that.
Now I'm in my foot prisons, mate.
It is, man. I was thinking of it a little more like those Chinese foot bindings they used to do. It's like, I want to have my perfect little pointy toes.
No, it felt great. Like, genuinely, it took a while to get used to it. I must admit, there was a point that it just kind of clicked, and I didn't hurt my feet anymore, and my feet kind of just naturally felt the right area to go.
It takes a little while. It's just like if you've never, with everything you've never done or not done a lot of, it just takes a little while to get
A bit
into.
like picking up a guitar.
Yeah.
Most people, when they get a guitar, go, "No, I don't like this," and throw it away because it's quite hard work, and it is a bit like relearning to walk, which.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it?
Just seems like something that you shouldn't have to do as an adult.
But if you then now you feel like how your body will jar as you hit your heel, you'll feel a very different way that it jars up, and you'll be able to feel like the way that connects up through your knee and hip and back, and you go, if I do that for a lifetime, maybe that's why I have lower back pain, rather than everyone gets lower back pain when you're older.
No, that's fascinating. It really was. I mean, it's obviously much more pleasant going barefoot in the nice soft mud.
Yeah, rather than down in Southampton.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, mate, I wouldn't go barefoot in Southampton. It would be a nightmarish experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so we're smashing breakfast, bit of coffee.
We've done it. We're very
Bacon.
civilised today. Bacon rail, bit of coffee.
Man, that
second pot of
bacon
coffee today.
is epic as well.
So good. You get a double smoke, which I think is the best thing. We got it on the oak, and you're getting that
And
smoke.
it's got a
up through
rind
it.
on it. I mean, I didn't really even clock last night when we were talking about it that bacon doesn't have a rind on anymore.
No, it's
I didn't
sad.
even realise that.
You're missing out on all the good stuff in there, and it also when it crisps up like that.
Yeah, there's a whole different texture level,
Yeah.
mate. This rinded bacon is something that we should get back in our lives.
Definitely.
There's a lot of people that cut it off, I understand. That's probably why they take it off anyway.
Yeah,
But
but you should have the option.
I want the option.
Yeah. Sandridge Farms, man.
Sandridge Farms.
They're best bacon I've ever had.
Like, stuck for choice. Go to Asda and there's no British. There's just no British bacon, let alone rinded bacon.
I know you're talking about it. Have some there.
Oh mate, thank you very much.
a
Thank
good
you
piece.
very much. Why does everything cooked over a fire taste so much better?
I think you're missing out on the holistic experience though, because you've got the cold air, your body's just like ready, you're getting heat from the fire, you're heating something that's the same temperature as the heat. It's all just this, everything in there. And everyone goes, it tastes better, but it's that holistic experience of it. Plus you're probably a bit hungry.
What's your opinion on the British hunting and shooting scene as somebody who is probably more connected with nature than most? I hesitate to use the word hippie because I think that's derogatory.
It is. It has a lot of negative connotations, and it takes away from the realistic experience of natural nature. And it helps people go, I don't like the fact that when I'm in nature I feel better, so I need to make that feel like something that other people do, so that I don't have to deal with that in my head. Because if I'm in my office and every day I'm thinking I'd much rather be out in the woods because I feel better out there, even when I go on a country walk I feel
It's
a bit
a
nice.
straight line to depression.
It is. It's like you have to go, that's for hippies. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then it means you can disassociate from that feeling and feel like,
Makes it a bit
so,
dirty.
On that exact same feeling, we are a country that has been denuded of its right to hunt for a really long time because we have a small amount of land. And the land that had great hunting in it and the bigger game hunting was for nobles and kings for a really long time. You used to, not that long ago actually in our whole history as a country, if you shot a deer in the New Forest, it was a capital offence. You could be killed, right? Or at least imprisoned.
A couple hundred years ago, which isn't
this
very
isn't
long.
that long ago, really. Right? So I think there is like the long-term disassociation from that, and obviously because of space, it's quite untenable. I think the problem in the UK that I struggle with is accessibility and natural spaces where you're looking at quarry, looking after a quarry in its natural environment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Expand on that, please. Sorry.
So, because of our paucity of space, we've had to increase the intensity of experiences in small areas.
And we're referring here more to the pheasant side of things, do you think?
I just think
Or-
across the board. So, for example, when you go into some of the bigger estates in the UK, or you get to walk through some of them, especially around Salisbury, there are some beautiful pieces of ancient woodland that are preserved and have deer in their natural habitat acting naturally. And then hunting there is a very different experience, I would imagine, to high seating in a spruce plantation.
Okay.
I'm definitely lost my way on this answer. Sorry.
No,
I
that's
went a bit
fine.
too
So,
wide
so what
too
you're
quickly.
saying is potentially that there is options in the UK that are more connected to nature.
So yes, let me go on this one. I can do this one. Yeah. So I think that there is like a way that we can hunt more naturally, but I think the problem with space and the way that it's currently allocated and the way that hunting is managed in the UK leads to that same poverty of space mindset being applied to the hunting world. Okay. And then it becomes a who you know, what you know. For example, I know that the whole of the Salisbury Plain is hunted by very few select people, and there is no way that someone who wanted to find a way to connect with their meat or do that could go there without finding very specific people and knowing the right people to ask in the first place, and then hoping that those people will take them even if it's paid.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so therefore, the average person is so disconnected from the possibility of hunting and any aspect of it, even air rifle hunting for like a pigeon or a squirrel or something.
It's still quite hard to
Most people
access.
have never had that experience, and because no one's had that experience, it's very difficult for people to connect with the idea of hunting, even conceptually, because they have no frame of reference for it. And because of that, it makes it very difficult for, I imagine, for yourselves to communicate even any aspect of it, because, pardon me, if people don't even have a frame of reference, how on earth are they supposed to understand? Yeah, and then when you have all these alienating factors like the way that you dress or all of the other things that I think is really important because it's about building culture.
Well, I also feel like that is because of our Britishness and our history, that is our form of respect, you know.
I understand
In other
that.
countries, there's a lot more respect and ceremony that goes into our hunts, and I think that somehow makes it more palatable to people. And I think that our form of respect perhaps is a bit too stiff.
Nuanced. I think it's nuanced. I mean, I understand that dressing up and not dressing up, but like changing the way you dress and
it's an old-fashioned type of respect as opposed to
it's more sort of like
more of a carnal respect that a
Yes.
lot of other countries have, which goes back further, is more relatable.
I think in the UK we have this disconnection. We're so far from our hunting gathering roots or our ability to live off the land because we are an older country in terms of our space take up and how many people we have and our structures.
Our social structure has been very
been
much
there for a really long time. That I can't remember the part at the beginning of this thing, so I'm going to restart.
Okay, it's fine.
Sorry. What were we talking about? At that point, we're talking about
respect and how our
respect.
our respect structure is very stiff upper lipped.
We have formalized everything. We formalized violence. We formalized everything to make it softer and more palatable. Because with the space we have and the intensity of the land and also the social structures we have to formalize things. Because if we were all to be able to we had that connection, it wouldn't fit in this space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And until we view public lands or lands in a different way, and I don't know if that's possible because of that long-term ancestral disconnect from it.
I think if everybody had that same respect for the land, it could be possible.
But you have to educate that. You have to have loved the land before you can respect it. You need to have experienced it before you can have a connection to it. The thing is, people who are in the countryside or outdoors a lot don't remember what it's like to not have any form of connection. And the problem is that we're raising generations and generations of people who don't have access, therefore can't have connection. And they don't have parents who had a connection. And so suddenly, even within like the last 3 generations, I'd probably say, there's not people who played outside as often as a kid, or if they did, it was in a setting. I went to the park. I didn't just run around because of increased numbers of traffic, increased, the cities just spreading and estates having fewer parks in them. Just simple things like that where they just...
And the parks being increasingly more sterilized.
So like, you can't say, oh, around the edge of my park there's brambles, because actually there wasn't brambles, there was just someone's front garden, because we need to increase the amount of houses on a square foot.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so then people who've been outside go, people aren't connected to the land, they do this, and you go like, that's someone's experience of that landscape as they don't understand it, because they don't understand the connection to the land, they don't understand how to love it. And I think that when I've brought people out to this woods, giving them an intense experience, whether that's taking their feet off, even if it's just something really simple, like we're going to have something you have indoors, cooked outdoors, having a coffee, having some bacon, something that you know, but in a different setting and seeing, doesn't the bacon taste just like a little bit better? And when that coffee out of that wood cup, doesn't it just sing a little bit sweeter? And that's because you're out here. And there's something here that's working you don't quite understand maybe. You're not quite sure what it is. And this isn't for you perhaps. But they start to see something. And then next time they go in the woods, maybe they're a little bit more connected. And therefore, when they have that moment where perhaps they would have littered, or perhaps they wouldn't have been able to go, someone else is going to come along here, or there's animals here. Or maybe they see a track. I don't have a clue what it is, but they're starting to think, there's something else here. There's something that's in me, that ancestry.
You're sort of releasing the inner human animal. I'm going to have that bacon right there.
Yes. And just respecting the fact that we do have ancestry from around the world of hunter-gatherers, and the fact that you're here is a testament to the fact your ancestors were good hunters. Because if they weren't, you wouldn't be here. And that's incredible. And then when you start to really connect with that, whether that's through just walking or being outside or just, going fishing or shooting and just being in and when you're shooting, you do get to be in some of those beautiful bits of the UK. Like you get to go onto private estates where you see old woodlands that are being managed just really for animals. And some places do it incredibly and some places do it, differently, as we've talked about before, because they're a bit too intense on the landscape perhaps. But when you get to be on these places, it must be incredible because you're seeing old bits of the UK. And it's not places where thousands of people have walked out, like some bits of the New Forest where they're sterilised. You're walking down a gravel path in nature. Don't step off the gravel path. And if you do,
there's a horse.
There's a horse, and there's this, and it's all been chewed up. There's no mushrooms. There's no moss. Everything is just sterilised out. There's barely any new trees because either people have trampled them, horses have grazed them out, deers have grazed them out.
Deer,
And that's the problem, is that people go there and go, I saw a tree, it was that. But it's not like being here. Because even in this woods, which is, let's face it, quite a new spruce plantation with some ancient oak on this side, even that newish spruce plantation, there's not loads of people going there. And you can tell there's not. And right now, you can hear all the birds and you can
We woke up this morning, there was a deer 20 metres from our hut. There'd been a muntjac going off over there. And
there's the buzzard overhead this morning going, just keying away, and you're just like, people don't have that experience in nature because... So if your mother told you every time you went outside and you got dirty and you got told off, you're going to start to build those paths in your head. But also I think your ego is there to protect you, but also we like in the story as a society that we aren't animals anymore, that we're not part of an ecosystem. And I think that story of like conquering rather than connection is the part of the problem. And we like to see ourselves as conquerors, and we like to see ourselves as separate or higher, rather than saying, okay, we're stewards or we have a responsibility in the ecosystem.
So having diagnosed potentially some issues there, I think, first you need to take some of that muntjac on.
Oh, yes, please.
Poor little bugger.
Oh, mesh. The oak smoke.
How do you potentially think that societally that could be combated? How do you think societally, so having sort of done it, how do you think societally we could actually combat that or change that? Because obviously hunting in the UK is becoming more contentious and less popular because people only see people don't really understand the management side of it. I think in this country we have a much greater need for management of certain species, whereas potentially in other countries they don't, because they have more wild space and more of a natural ecosystem that manages itself. And how do you potentially tell people that this is not an evil thing?
I think the first thing you need to talk about is connect people back to that birthright of nature connection. Like, we are all designed to be in natural spaces, like biologically. And I think when you look at studies around the world, like in Japan, like Shinrin-yoku, which is like forest bathing, they even something like a half-hour walk in the weekend in a natural forest, in a sort of in an ancient forest, can dramatically reduce your risk of like heart disease and drop your blood pressure, and that will last for weeks afterwards. There's lots of interesting research going across the whole world about small amounts of intense experience in nature can generally help most people. So I think the first thing is helping people access ancient woodlands and natural spaces, first of all. And then I think that the real problem is that because the hunting community is quite isolated, in that they don't want to share their poor resource. You know, we don't have a lot of this, and people aren't going, I really want to share this with as many people as I can because I have a great experience here. People are like, I haven't had a great experience, so I don't want to share it, because if I share it, it will detract from it. We need people to be more vocal and share their experience in the UK, because people don't have a problem. It's something that I experienced. I was quite nervous as someone who does a lot of nature connection to sort of share the fact that I butcher wild game with my daughter all the time.
Yeah.
We get it from the game dealer most of the time, and we cut up a deer, and that's most of the meat we eat. But I was quite nervous about that, but I had no problem from any vegan, vegetarian, because they see it as part of the natural cycle. They know that those populations need to be controlled because we have no top tier predators. People understand that, and people are scared that people won't understand that. But most people understand that we have a responsibility to the land in that way.
Do you think that if we had more reverence for the animals we killed, people would have less of an issue with it? Or do you
think that people do. I think that the problem is that the things that people see are those disconnected tropes you see in movies.
Yes.
You see like the bad hunter coming to heal the innocent animal, and then the other side you see is like, I'm the native, you know, you see the beautiful Native American sort of hyper, they take one aspect of a hunt and ham it up to make you feel nicer about the fact they killed an animal. Do you know what I mean?
Explain, sorry.
So people have a basic connection to when you see, in all indigenous cultures, you see a respect for the animal, but it is a practical respect that is part of every single day. There's not, and people, when they portray that on movie, to make that moment that would be very practical spirituality, they show you a very intense moment. And I think when you see people who do have a connection to their hunting, I've not seen, even though people are quite macho about it when they talk about it, I don't see, and because they're all worried about being seen as, it's sort of weirdly
too hippie,
too connected. But I don't think that you can escape the experience that people have when they hunt. I think people who can have an incredible problem with their ego rather than a problem with that. Their ego is so strong that it can overcome the fact that naturally when you take a life, there is a feeling.
It is intensely
exciting and intensely and real.
Exciting, it's sorrowful.
Yeah.
But you can't, because of potentially our stiff upper lip Britishness, indulge in that.
But also you don't have an indigenous mindset that would allow you to have a moment there.
Yeah.
And I think what's exciting and interesting about the American hunting culture is there's a sort of shift going on there, that it's moving back towards that connection. They're taking lives, but I think you see an increasing majority of people who are moving away from the yeehaw, bang, 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 whoa, I shot 16 bucks, to the story of the hunt and people connecting to taking meat from the landscape. And I think that story
is more beautiful.
It's more beautiful, it's more holistic, and it's also
more saleable,
but also
palatable.
It is, but 10 years ago, those same people would have been called out as weak or hippie for doing it that way.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
It's kind of ridiculous when you think about it.
But that's because we got to a point societally where the emotive became taboo.
Okay.
Say in 90s.
So do you think we're way too far gone in this country to ever make hunting palatable?
No. Not at all.
I mean, it's worth stating here that Martin actually, apart from being, a woodsman, because I think that's the nice way of putting it, actually is the best word, works in PR and marketing.
Yeah.
So how would you, in your intense wisdom, go about potentially reversing people's psychology on this?
I think this is the thing. I used to think before I worked with children, that it was something that just couldn't be done. I looked at you and thought, this is a lovely little niche you have, but no one gets it because it's so distant from people.
Should we start cooking waffles?
Yes, mate.
Yeah,
Okay.
So, tell me about this niche, sorry.
So you're in a niche, and within your niche you get this feedback loop that's just like, we're all happy and everything's great as long as we keep going. Even the sort of controversies you make up are just to keep you all, you know, within your own niche. Like the whole thing from the outside, no one the outside of your community cares whether you're using lead. Well, we care about the landscape effect, but no one really understands the difference for you, lead and steel, all that thing that you've been talking about for... Yeah. I know it's a massive deal for everyone inside the community, but it's just from the outside it just doesn't seem a thing. Anyway, sorry, that shouldn't have gone to that.
I have like come out in serious stress spots this last couple of weeks from talking
let's
about
not talk about that.
I
So
don't
where
want to
were
talk about
we?
it. It's not.
And where were we? So I want to talk about basically.
No, PR
we're talking
and
about the
marketing.
niche. So,
Yeah,
let's go back. Sorry.
And you were talking about how before you worked with kids, you thought that actually this was a nice little niche that would just
In
do
the
its
UK
thing.
would slowly fizzle out, and it would just become those people who have land that would be hunting, and then you would stay that sort of size. But when I used to work forest schools after I left the forces for 3 years.
Yeah.
Over the time I worked with over 2,000 kids, right? And some of them for a long time. And when there is an instinctual hunter inside all those children, when you give a kid a bow, or like we made slings, or we're making spears, there's something in them that loves that. And when they're cooking meat over a fire on a stick, just like we're doing now, they're toasting themselves. The joy, like the sheer joy when they cook and eat their meat, there is something there that's just there. It's undeniably ancestral to hunt and consume and be part of that cycle. So I think that, as always, I think that the answer is in education and allowing something that's natural to flourish rather than crushing it. But I think until you start enabling the parents and teaching children, until people like yourself and other stalkers share that with people and are willing to share those stories and feel less like under a cultural taboo, you can't do it. You have to change the stories that we're telling, because seeing a load of people walk out into Tweed, who understands even what they're doing?
It's very
alien. It's very easy to make them the
full
other.
of barriers, yeah.
But your neighbour coming round with a steak of venison, I mean, like just, and
Beer
saying,
stalking is a
try this,
significantly easier sell the world.
right? Yeah, but even if your neighbour says, here's some pheasant goujons,
Yeah, man.
yeah, that you've prepared and you've taken the time to, and sharing that with somebody, even that moment, they can go, oh, I can see that this, at least, is something that I can understand. Like, this wild meat tastes better than my chicken. Those moments where you go, food, and you make it about food, or you make it about the story of something. You tell a different story rather than, I love going out the weekend and just, and then say it's about nature connection, when really, maybe you just enjoy shooting big guns. Who doesn't?
I think there might be an issue with people understanding,
Or that
and I could
perception of
really
it.
upset people by saying that there might be an issue with people understanding why they do what they do
Yes.
in reality, and I think a lot of people perhaps lie to themselves about it being a natural connection when it may not be. And I think we're all guilty of it, maybe overindulging with killing game birds,
Yeah.
and that in itself is a very hard thing. Sorry, do you want me to just kick that
This is
log slightly sideways, or are we?
Yeah, we can figure this out.
No, I think if people perhaps were allowed to feel the sorrow without the ego, there might be less.
Yeah, and I think in Britain we have a lot of
Intensive
cultural
killing
shame around a lot of things that is really interesting to explore, especially once you experience other cultures, you see other cultures now being more open with their hunting culture. And people returning to feeling okay to feel
Yeah.
the intensity of the experience. Not necessarily having to be like super emotive about that, but just it's okay that you felt different things about shooting a deer.
Yeah.
And it's also fine if you just enjoy shooting for the sport of shooting.
Yeah, I think that's fine
But
too.
the point is,
I genuinely think that's absolutely
if you
fine.
come home and then sell a different story, they're like, oh, it's really about big dog walk in the woods with my gun, and you're telling yourself a different story.
It's bollocks. It's a lie.
It's not story.
Yeah.
I love the difficulty of skill of shooting a pheasant on the wing. That is fine.
Yeah.
But don't tell the story that is about nature connection, because people go, wait a second, they see the
That's
fallacy
actually
in it.
very other. in itself.
People see
and
the
I think
fallacy in
people
it.
do. There is a lot of people that do it for that natural connection because
I
it's the
agree.
only opportunity they get for a properly, intensely
Natural experience.
natural and carnal experience.
But also part of that is just the fact that you're in you're in countryside all day, around a community of people that are doing something together in nature.
It's a very healthy experience.
It is, and I think
very
that
healthy
can be
experience.
replicated in so many other ways that take those same ideas and translate it. And I think that's the side. I think in all other communities, you see a lot of youth development programs. You see a lot of people trying to bring people into that community and people being open with their skills and time and resources. Whereas I know that because it costs quite a lot of money to sort of get in initially.
No, I think it costs quite a lot of money. Wait, say it costs a lot of money. It doesn't have to.
Doesn't have
but
to.
It depends on your perspective.
The barrier to entry, unless you
A
know
couple of
someone, is a
£100
lot.
is quite a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
But it's also not a lot of money for the privilege of doing what you're doing.
I agree,
And
but also
this
you
is
need to
spin-off,
know the
isn't it?
person, you need to know what you're doing, and to be honest, like, if you meet the wrong person, so if you're there going, I want to have a spiritual experience, and you find someone who's part of, say, an older school mentality, and you're going, right, we're going to go whack out 20 does today, it's going to be fucking brilliant. Bang, 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 bang.
How's them in the back of the truck?
Throw
Let's
in
get
the
on.
let's go on,
Which is fine.
Which is fine, which is completely
Because
fine,
it
because
also
it needs to be done.
Yeah.
But my point is, if you're going for a spiritual experience and the first person you meet is that, you're going to feel very turned off to that.
Yeah.
And then people...
It might not be what you're looking for.
what you're looking for. And I think the thing is that a lot of people are looking for that, and it's quite hard to find unless you know somebody.
I think it's almost like this, but I can't think of any
think there are
British stalkers who are going to take you out barefoot in a nicest possible
Well, not
way.
even that, but like there are people, I know that from people I know, there are people in Scotland who have gillies that will take you onto a long walk and stalk you as you stalk a red deer, and that's very different.
Yeah, well, it's a completely different world to down here.
I'm totally with you, but there is the space here to do a similar experience. I mean, even yesterday when we were up at the older woods there, the beauty of that was just being able to sit in that high seat, but with someone leaving with the intention that you can do that, rather than, okay, I'm going to grab every single bit of gear that I bought this year. I got one day where I get to shoot one gold medal row.
Which is also nothing
Which
wrong
is,
with.
again, nothing wrong with it. I'm not...
There is something very carnal about wanting to take the biggest buck, and I can't understand that, whether that's just a natural greed or whether that's because
It's about the story.
we're
Hungry communal people for stories. If you're the man that comes back with the big buck and you're that person, ancestrally, that's a good thing because there's a lot of meat on it. There's a big old, liver and all the organs you can eat, all of that good stuff that you provide thing. There is something that ancestrally connects when you see that and go, more food and prestige and the story to bring back to the tribe.
It's so funny, isn't it? I mean, this has been a very intense experience and a lot of very deep conversations that you guys haven't been sort of privy to. That perhaps, I'm not saying I'm going to go away and change my life entirely, but it is a very interesting perspective that perhaps we could do with spiritualizing hunting, or at least allowing that to be an avenue that's okay.
I think that it's not even about spiritualizing, it's allowing the whole of the experience.
Emotionalizing then.
No, the whole experience, because it already is that, but it's allowing your your gateways of perception, the things you put up to help you stay safe in a normal environment, say your office and all those things that you can't experience. You're already experiencing it. It's not there. But you close it down to make it more palatable for your mind, or you guard yourself against it from your ego or from all these different places. So allowing the experience that's actually happening to you to actually happen to you, rather than going, I'm scared, and so I'm going to keep making it this. Because if I was to engage with the intensity of that, I'm going to keep on the story in my mind of, I'm just whacking bucks because I'm a big macho fucking man, right? And you were just able to go, actually, that guy who's doing that is having that experience, but he's guarding himself from that experience. Because ancestrally, you're wired to have that. Your chemicals in your body will release the same way. And I guess over time, you can build up an immunity to that, and you can start reprogramming your brain. But your base programming, the base programming of like a kid when they're eating that meat, we were talking about before, or shooting a bow, or using a sling, or even shooting an air rifle. Like, I always shoot air rifles as kids, and the whole thing of just being able to sight and shoot and hit a target, like there's a little joy in there.
Yeah, it feels good, mate.
It does. But then it needs to translate into something real. And the point is that people don't always translate into something real. And they go, I quite like this thing, the idea of hitting something. But the point is, if it doesn't then turn into a whole experience of, I went out, I learned to shoot, I shot a rabbit, I cooked the rabbit tasted delicious. that experience is something that's a story. That's something that's real. That's something that's carnal. And when we try to separate those aspects out, you lose something.
So stepping back,
Yeah.
how would you market shooting in that sense then? How does that actually digest back to how day to day could shooting organisations or ourselves or anybody actually work towards making that a thing?
I think that it's about putting it out there as this is something real that's in you. And then taking children, adults through open experiences, having open days and saying, right, come here, you get to shoot a rifle and we'll feed you as dinner as a venison steak and we'll tell you 2 stories round a fire of hunting that we did in the UK in a way that's ancestral. People are wired for that and people would love it.
So
Same with children.
Organisations promote specific type of hunting.
Okay, so
Like
like,
communal days of hunting.
okay, so I think that with that, you're talking not communal days of hunting.
Adding this kind of experience into a hunting experience to make it more digestible.
You don't even need to do that. It's not about making hunting more digestible. It's about making people understand what on earth you're doing in the first place. Because you are already so far removed from not having done it that you can't see that you want to bring people along to like step 12 and people haven't even stepped step 1. Step 1 is, can you be outside, around a fire, cook a bit of meat? Can you see, people haven't seen a deer or any animal in its whole entirety. If that leg came into most people, they wouldn't with it all cut up like that, it's quite graphic.
It is pretty graphic.
But getting last
also
night,
delicious.
Sasha, for the first time, cutting a piece of meat off of the deer, toasting it on the fire, that's an experience in itself, that's step 1. And people with all these different people want to be able to take people to step 12 because they're already on step 15.
Yeah.
And they need to go,
You want to give them like the real good stuff.
yeah, you want to get them there. I want you, bring you to Jesus.
Come and shoot the pheasant. Come and shoot the pheasants. Yeah.
And the point is,
Without actually
come out
having
for a walk, like go and
cooked the
beating,
pheasant, done this, get beating, get
do something.
involved.
And I think there are now more and more barriers even to getting involved with beating or all those things. You can't just say turn up on a Sunday and get 20 quid because there's syndicated beats, right?
Or necessarily there's now there's a tax implication with earning wages for casual wages.
Oh, okay.
There's barriers to that. There's
okay.
There's also the fact that people are very scared now of people being infiltrated by anti-hunters.
antis. Oh, okay.
So people are much more cautious about who comes beating.
Okay.
There's
But
a lot more vetting that goes
Yeah.
into that now.
But I think for me, seeing that's the one thing that I understood as a kid, going beating on big estates that my aunt worked on. I got to go beating as a little kid, and I understood the hunting because I saw that they were just normal people who were having a great day, and that we were chasing the birds out of the woods, and they were shooting them over the woods. It's an easy sell, but I needed to know somebody who knew somebody to get in, to do that, and that was like when I was 10. And that's different, but the point is, it's all about steps. Sorry, going back to the actual point I'm making. Step 1 is go in the woods, have a fire. I'm going to cook that a bit more.
No, the top bit.
Oh, the top bit, sorry.
The top bit a little bit. Yeah.
Amazing. Seeing a deer broken down, eating it in a way that's delicious, even if it's just over oak smoke.
Yeah, it tastes pretty good.
So good. And there's nothing done to that, not even salt.
No. It tastes quite salty anyway, actually, I think. It does taste quite
And
salty.
hearing a new story told about it, like when I hear you talk about the story you told on the boar hunt,
Oh,
that whole story, and
I
you
can't
telling
talk
the
about
story
it,
of
so
that
it's so heartbreaking.
afterwards,
Yeah.
right? Do you know what I mean? Or the armistice buck we ate today.
Yeah.
My
It's
goodness,
a beautiful story.
It's a beautiful story, and you're
It was
connected
an
with that
amazing
story
day
through
out.
eating.
And there's a beauty in this sort of modern storytelling, Sasha, that we can do together to share that story in a way that, because you can't say everyone come to my campfire, everyone come and listen
But
to
the
this
point
story.
is, you could have 12 people around here, and everyone can have a little bit of it, talk about it, and for a morning, have that open and give that to people. And then people have a way in. Because if they can just book up for it for nothing, or for a small fee, people get an experience of something they've wanted. And then they can go, is this for me? Is it not? Okay, they can see the base story here.
Ooh.
Okay.
Something just shot on my foot. Glad I'm not barefoot right now. Yeah, it would have been hot. I mean, you wanted more
Telling the story, telling that story though, and sharing the meat of that story is something that is undeniably ancestral. and it starts to tell a different story.
That's the true gateway.
Yeah, because people need to be outside first, hard, in a different environment to their experience of, say, the New Forest or a country park, right? Where everything's guarded, where you're on a nice place that you're not going to have any engagement from nature. You're not going to have that much mud because it's all gravel. You're going to have all the corners rounded, and therefore there is less options for you to connect. There's a bit of spruce in there going off, isn't there? So yeah, it's simple. Step 1, and everyone wants to take them to step 12, bring them to Jesus. But people don't, like, kids don't even know what the types of deer are. They go, it's a deer. Teaching kids the 5 types of deer.
That's not kids, mate. I saw a baby deer by the side of the road. Well, muntjac. There is, yeah.
But even in the way you present that is a duh, because you've been so deep in it, you don't see that as you. But then the point is, even that to someone who's just getting out and going, I did this thing, you'll never guess it, and you're already going, well, from my experience, that's just really childish. But for their experience, that's the first time they've seen something and recognised it. But at that time, if you were to give them, like, bring them around the fire, give them a guide to deer, tell them about the story of how there's too many deer and they eat all the fucking baby trees.
Yeah.
And if we don't manage it because we've taken out the links and we've taken out the things
And we
that
have broken the UK.
Yeah, which is fine. But the Romans broke the UK, do you know what I mean?
No. The Celts broke the UK.
Celts broke the UK. We all broke the UK. But the point is...
that looks pretty good. By the way, if you haven't got one of these in your life,
Get a cast iron waffle.
a cast iron waffle pan is hands down the coolest thing.
Petromax or something golden off eBay. There you go.
I'll take those over to Monavakovic. Come here, man. Take that. That's the most delicious thing ever.
I'm open with it. But even this experience of simple coffee and a little bit of meat and a story, that's what you need. Because that's what kids were used to be growing up on. Before they went hunting, they would listen to their dad tell stories around a fire for generations and generations. And then they would give an accessibility tool to it. Like, okay, I have a small estate that has rabbits on it. I'm going to set up a little bun line. We're going to shoot a rabbit. Something simple that you can achieve. And that's it. Maybe that's the only experience they have, but at least then they have a frame of reference for when they're older and someone goes, we want to ban this. And they go, well, I don't like that happening.
That brought me joy when I was younger.
That brought me joy when I was younger, and I can understand that someone else might want to do that more. I have a frame of reference that now I can draw on. Or I was at least out, and I like the fact that that woodland is preserved because people want to shoot roe deer in it.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I don't like that. But the people that are there, their only experiences, I saw Planet Earth, and people killing things on Planet Earth, the documentary I saw on telly, is bad. And that's it. So you have to give people an experience. You have to give them a new story to tell themselves. But until you do that, the only stories they're going to hear are the stories of cruelty, the stories that the common man needs to hear, or sells easier, because fear and the other sells easier than connection. And
so we're talking like the 12-step plan.
I'm talking just
countryside.
You just need one step.
No,
you need
I'm
to
saying,
give people
like,
the
maybe
opportunity.
that's like a thing. That is your marketing thing.
Yeah.
Is you go, actually, here's some steps. Take people through the steps.
Yeah.
Here's a guide to getting people in the countryside, which just seems so stupid.
Yeah. But to be honest, even
yeah.
yesterday when we were foraging something, if you encourage someone, even with something simple like, you know what, wild garlic, which I'll get some now, we can eat with the deer, now just wrap it up and eat that. Ooh, that intensity of flavour is something you just don't get in the supermarket. But people are so like, just see green, and they don't have that education. Even take something like foraging, which is a form of hunting for plants.
Which is, yeah.
Says, I went to a woods, right, and I got dinner. I can understand that someone might want to do that. And it felt good. Even just picking leaves.
And it's utterly accessible.
Super accessible.
Yeah. There's your step 2.
Step 2. But my point is, until you educate someone, they're going to go out there and grab something that might be, for example,
poisonous.
Lords and Ladies, that grows in the same patch as that. And suddenly, that experience is, I threw up when I ate green things and I went to hospital. Because it's only a little bit of education. Barriers. But not a lot. My daughter can name and forage 20 plants. It's not hard.
But she in herself is privileged to have.
But
you
she
as a
has
father.
me as a father,
Yeah.
right? But the point is that with a small amount of education, I can teach most people like a good 6 plants they can add to their diet every day, and it tastes good. There's a lot of foragers out there that I think just sort of go, I want to learn everything, and it's about the amount of things that they can teach, rather than necessarily like, I've collected so many bits of knowledge, rather than going, this tastes good. You should collect a lot of it and make something delicious with it because that's accessible. Anyway, but it's the same with hunting. You want to take people to step 12, rather than going, step 1, try the top of a nettle. It's really peppery and
But it is also
fresh.
difficult for people, I think, to take that step in a childish way, because it is the ability to step back and go,
The vulnerability.
okay,
I don't know something.
I don't know something.
Yes.
When we're told every day that makes
That
you an
makes
idiot.
you an idiot, yeah, if you don't know it. But also the fact that even then when you're talking about deer, that person who's come to you and said, hey, I found a deer, and you're going, yeah, it's a muntjac, mate. Or, is that a terrier barking over there? What's that terrier doing? And you go, no, if you take that from a thing,
yeah.
you're educating it from a point of education rather than, oh, I know this, I've known it since I was this age. Sorry. I was hoping we were to make some birch syrup today to have with these, but it would have just taken a long old time.
Oh, mate, next time.
Next time.
Next time. The simplest food just tastes so good over this fire.
Because it's imbuing with all the smoke and the heat, and you're getting that difference of crunch and taste that you don't get from uniform heat off a hob. Interesting. But that's it.
Would you be
variety of
happier if
experience.
everyone lived in caves?
No, because let's face it, the modern world's quite nice.
Yeah, it's
As
quite
much
comfortable.
as much as that sounds great, sleeping in that tent last night, it's cold, and you can make it warmer and all those things. But at night you're
You can
cold.
build, put bricks around it,
Yeah,
put some central heating in it.
yeah,
Why wouldn't you?
exactly.
We've come all this way for a reason.
But it's about it's about the part. Something that I heard said beautifully recently is that discipline is the partner to wildness. They are like the twins, that they have to be kept in balance. You can
It's a
have a
yin and yang
disciplined
sort of
modern
situation.
world, but you need to also accept that you are a wild person and that you need to tend that as much as you tend your discipline in your everyday normal life. So you are wild, you are innately an animal. And until you sort of see that you're innately an animal, but also that you can have that and your iPhone, but you need to acknowledge both, not just acknowledge the iPhone, not just acknowledge the working day, not just acknowledge the fact that we have come so far, and therefore we have mastered or passed the point where we're an animal, until you recognize you're an animal and you can then do that. And again, I know that I'm going
that
quite
is
a lot over the
okay.
place. That's okay. And there is a space for it in your life, even if that's just a Saturday morning walk, where you spend a little bit more time slowing down, not just, oh, I'm going to walk 3 miles, that you're going to go for a walk and just experience what you experience.
Yeah, just
like the
wander.
wind. Or like maybe next time you take your feet off and dangle it in the stream. Just a little bit, like you were a kid. Whatever it is. Or take your shoes off and walk across a nice bit of grass. Just something that just accepts that that's just part of who you are. And I know that like the more nuanced things that I'm saying here as someone who's been doing this for a long time is similar to when you're saying, I'm at step 15, come to step 15. And for some people, the first step might just be, I'm gonna take my shoes off and walk on my garden. Or I'm just gonna allow
shoes
the
off.
idea that I'm a wild person to percolate in my head for a little bit. That might be a step for someone. And that's just as valid as, you know, going for a 14-mile barefoot run through the woods or just eating venison.
We're going to take a step onto the slightly more
Yeah.
ridiculous at this point, because it's
Yeah.
important that people perhaps understand the sentiment
Yeah.
of you. Are you a conspiracy theorist?
In what?
Do you think that we've done this to ourselves? Do you think this is a control measure that people put in place?
May.
Do you think that humans naturally would be where we are? Or do you think that this is just, I was going to say, is it easier to control us? I don't want to sound like I don't want to put it like a conspiracy.
Well, we talked about this yesterday evening. If you have a full connection to your natural self and you feel great out here and you realize you don't need that much to be happy, like a little bit of meat and a bit of shelter and a fire that you can get for free from nature, it's a lot harder to sell you things. And therefore,
Are you
I
a
don't think
communist? Or are you an anti-capitalist? in
No.
that instance?
I think that I don't know, interesting. I think that capitalism is just something that's grown out of our desire to trade, and people want to trade and get more, and us trying to understand how we engage with more people and trying to model up just the number of people we have around the place. So we have to have systems that allow us to engage with each other in trade and things like that. And then there are things that have just grown naturally out of that desire that was positive, that become control measures because people need to make those money. This guy sat in a Samsung place that needs to get his money, he needs to get a paycheck because he needs to be able to feed his family. Therefore, we need to be able to sell that to people and make people feel like they need the new Galaxy 20 Note 17, 14, whatever. When realistically, if he's out here at this moment, what do we need? Well, it'd be helpful to have some water, but but there's a lot in the sky at the moment.
Yeah, all of last night and yesterday and yesterday evening. It paid off because the sky is blue and clear and
it's beautiful.
It's actually warmed up a bit.
My point.
Just come sit by this fire, Sasha.
This oak fire is really warm, Sash.
Mate.
The point being is that I don't see this as a conspiracy, but I do think in the UK there has been some aspects of the class system, or there's still aspects of our peasant mentality that are perpetuated by a system that keep us servile, rather than, I think that if we're in our baseline connection to nature, and you see it in other parts of the world where there's more space, there is less ability for systems to control you, or you feel like you have more power just through that baseline connection. Boom.
There you go.
So
I'm saying the UK sucks.
No, I'm saying is that as an old country, we have a lot of societal history and therefore societal programming over history, which is great. Like, we have a lot of great history. I'm not denying that. I'm saying is that within that history, we have a lot of places where people garner power and use that power for control, and systems that started maybe 1,000 years ago that served that moment and served that person's power and now playing out as societal tropes today, and we haven't re-examined that in the UK. And there are other parts of the world where they have taken time perhaps to re-examine that and the way we integrate and react to nature. And now we're just sort of playing triage with a broken system rather than going, maybe there's a time and a place within an aspect of the world, whether that's the way we view public land or the way we view people's right to engage with public land, perhaps in a hunting capacity, that needs to be readdressed now and not being seen as, well, let's keep trying to fix the fact that it used to be hunted by the kings, and we're still sort of carrying forward that mentality.
Hey, Mark, can I get you to put the transceiver in that other pocket?
Yes, mate.
Every now and then, just fade in and out.
Sorry.
Get the wire sort of poking out your pocket. Right.
So yeah, I feel like we've just been all over the place here, and I think it's quite easy when you've been all over the place with the conversation to deny the root of the conversation, which was really simple, which is we are humans that are naturally connected, and that the best thing we can do is take someone that we are connected to as hunters or outdoorsmen outside with us and share that experience, and not see that as something that retracts from us, but see that as something that adds to us and gives to them. Even if at that time you're just serving them, you're just making them coffee, making them waffles, making them bacon, and giving them deer that you hunted, and saying, well, I just want to share something that I love with you in a way that's accessible, rather than going, one day I'll take you hunting. Just take them out in your back garden and make a wood fire and cook a bit of venison for them. Something simple. Make it simpler and share those stories that perhaps they might be boring, but try and be a better storyteller. Tell the story like Sash tells the story of, like when you saw that the Beaters Day video I've seen on your video. You can't deny the joy of the community in that video, and the story that's going on there is really great, because like you see a lot of people who are friends going out to enjoy something together, and that people serving each other in a community sharing something they love. People don't hate that. The fact that people are scared that people will think that just seems really farcical, because it's a story you tell. If the story was, I went down the pub, had slow gin, did this, if you're not telling it in a way that says, I was part of a community, and there's a point we have to be egotistically vulnerable. Your ego has to be vulnerable and go, they might think I'm an idiot because I'm sharing something that I'm passionate about, but that passion overcomes that if you tell it right, and you're not like, I went down to deer and smashed 15 fucking bucks, mate. Boys. Exactly. But you have to tell that story and be vulnerable enough to tell the story. I think some people are just even scared to tell the story of that armistice buck was quite an intense experience, and eating today was great, and it reminds you of the story of that day, and it gives you all of this experience, and not guarding yourself from that experience as you're eating the deer. Because it could be easy, like, I had a bit of deer, I had a bit of venison for tea.
Shot deer, chopped it up, ate it.
Great.
Yeah,
but that's also fine. But if you're trying to induce someone, it's just like this callousness to it. It denies something that's in everybody that goes, I don't understand that, because in my heart, when I think about that idea, because my chemistry says that's wrong.
Killing an animal is a sad thing to do.
Or no, and it is an emotive experience.
There is some sorrow in it that people deny quite regularly.
Or
and that's why people are against it, because they see that death and they feel sad, but they don't understand the other aspects of emotion that come with it.
I don't know, it's about sadness. I think sadness is really simple. I think that you're experiencing something that's ancestrally chemical, that has its own limiting factors into it, so that you don't, if you were a predator, right? So if you see like, as an omnivore and as a human, you have the brain chemistry that says, limits you from just going, I know, okay, I found a way to shoot. I know, when we do it in our history as well, which is interesting, but as an animal, you're limited. Like, I can shoot and eat this much. So the chemical response is to understand that, like, I've taken this much, that's enough, right? Whereas you see some carnivores that don't have that wiring, and they get in a chicken coop and they kill all the chickens and eat one, because the joy of the kill is there, and the bloodlust is there.
But their brains are nowhere near as developed as ours.
Their brains are developed in a different way than ours. And it's trying to see that we have developed over hundreds and thousands of years to where we're at now, and if we deny all of that history and biology, it's a farce. And it will always reassert itself. And when you're telling a story that says that's against people's biological reaction, and that's not sadness, I think it's a whole experience of just like, your callousness towards the taking of life feels wrong to my biology, or your callous expression of it. The fact that you actually experienced something different, but you're showing it to the world as, I'm such a macho man. Because that's the sort of 1980s tropey bullshit action man that people are still trying to be. I'm Sly Stallone. I just went into the woods and killed 50 people.
It's pretty cool.
It's cool, but it's not real.
You're saying that
Rambo ain't real.
And Rambo, Fly, they're all, that's not a real thing. Don't break my heart.
That's another conspiracy.
What are your thoughts on American hunting representation?
In America, interesting. I think that there is a move in America that is allowing people to take life in a way that's acceptable to them. The increase in bow hunting, the increase so that it requires a technical skill, the move of telling stories about harvesting animals. I think those things are already there, and you see lots of old guys that do have a formalized respect for their prey as well. That's always been there. And I think also they have a connection to the land because they're still in that sort of, in some respects, a really young country, and they have a lot of space. But they can now, you see just in the way they've been telling stories. So if you look at like a 1990s, look, there's a buck. Oh my goodness. Cut to like the buck falling down, and then going, whoa, I just smashed a 15-pointer. That's just not the story anyone wants to see anymore, because it's not real.
Yeah.
And because the stories are now more available, people are telling a story of, I ate this beautiful elk, for example, that gave me this. And I did it through this story with my friends. I did it in communion with the land. And it's not necessarily like this, spiritual experience, but it just acknowledges the holistic experience. It acknowledges that basic connections we have as humans.
The other things you get out of from it,
Yeah.
apart from the 15-point buck, woo, boom.
And there are still people who do that because their egos are so big and they have such a history of their family going, this is the thing you do as a man. The story they've been told. They perpetuate that
Which
story.
is just a development from the original anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a...
Bow hunting completely illegal in the UK.
Completely illegal.
Completely illegal.
If you had it your way, would you introduce that?
100%.
Yeah. And I would also
it
then...
makes sense in our country because of the size.
Yes, it makes more sense. But the problem is it's harder to regulate. And when we did have it legally, you had quite a lot of people using it as a poaching tool.
Yeah,
and then
well,
the
we
people...
wiped out roe deer in this country.
Sorry.
I'm sure it'll be crunchy and delicious.
Not sorry, that's a good bit.
Blimey.
No, I could get used to waffle toast. Waffle toast is pretty good. Get a Marmite on that bad boy.
Do you think we're currently doing a much better job now than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago?
No. Reason being is that
we're just equally as bad as a. Well, I mean, is that
No,
question
I think
from
not,
a
because I
hunting
think
side, Sash, or is that?
PR and practically.
I think that because people are feeling more open, they are, especially as British people, we're quite reserved, and people are more because of social media, because of more accessibility. People can see people, and then they are scared of sharing that experience because it's going to be public. And because it's public, people are worried that they're going to be maligned. Sorry.
So equally,
It's the burnt waffle smoke. People are worried they're going to be maligned, and so
they might be less.
people are
conscious of
more
their ego,
reserved.
but
So
they
therefore, people are
don't wanna
taking less
expose that.
people out, and people are less worried, less interested. So people don't want to post their picture of them with their buck, the roe they shot. Because they're worried that people are going to go, you're a horrible hunter. But the point is they
everybody
also
seems to
aren't
be anti-grip and grin, as they call them.
The point is that's not bad. It's just a case of until you have the context. So like I really liked there was something that I think I was listening to where people were saying like you need to show the story in a way that people can understand it. So show the meat, show the countryside you're in, show the way you did it. And then the grip and grin, so that they can see the whole experience and they see where your heart is. It doesn't necessarily even need to be the meat. It doesn't have to be on meat hunting. It can be like, here I was with my friend. This is like that picture of you in front of the stacks. I saw that up there, and it's a wonderfully odd juxtaposition, but you see the story in the picture. This is us maintaining a countryside way of life against this backdrop of really harsh industry and the city and the world. And I thought that was really captured a moment of what you're doing and the tweed and everything that then fits into landscape, and it really contrasts well with everything else. And so therefore it feels like this is our woolen natural camouflage and our way to blend in and be part of this. And it made sense as a story in a picture.
Yeah.
And that's the story that we should be telling, but also you need to tell the story. People need to tell their stories. But there are the people that end up telling it are the people who have enough ego to go, I got it, and those people are often the worst people to be telling the stories.
Should the field sports community internally start to push away from people only coming in, killing, and then leaving?
Well, I think that's it. No.
That's a huge. The problem is, and I talk about this to myself quite often, that I do feel that it's wrong that the majority, at least of the pheasant side, is people come into the countryside, they kill the pheasants, and they leave the countryside.
No.
But also, if that's the only access they can gain, and it's also a large financial input into the countryside, then it boils back to the same sort of argument they have in Africa. Is it wrong that someone goes out there for a week, mercs a load of animals and leaves? Well, no, because A, they're indulging in the countryside, the wildlife aspect. They get to hunt, which brings them joy, and they're also putting a bucket of money in that maintains that countryside from being an intensive farm, which our countryside would look like as well. Intensive farming, intensive forestry, solar farms, housing, because that would be the most efficient way of controlling it and wipe out all wildlife.
There's one old estate that used to be an estate area around Salisbury that now has been sold off into lots of has gone to an arable model, and it's destroyed a huge side of our city that used to have a lot more open field and forest that's now wheat and solar farms. Yeah. And you're just going,
because that's good money.
It's good money, I get it. And I understand that conceptually, but you're always saying that people go, I hate hunting. Well, they go, well, you really like being able to walk out Grovelly. You really like being able to walk out into different parts of the countryside.
You can't go to the New Forest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The New Forest is there because kings loved hunting big deer.
Fallow, yeah. Big fallow, which they also brought over to hunt. you know.
So, yeah, it's a really, looking at the field sports community and your question, I think there isn't, in the UK there has to be a certain practicality because of our space. There has to be. You can't just go, I'm going to separate myself from that. We have to have practicality in it. However, within that, there needs to be a responsibility taken for people understanding that we are still part of the ecosystem, even though we decided in our minds, in the story we tell ourselves, to reduce ourselves from it, remove ourselves from it. We're just a higher presence. You're already part of it. Your impact is already happening, and then now you can only choose to have a positive or a negative impact. There's no neutral. And the story of neutrality is a really dangerous one. Like, I leave no trace. You still walk there. You impacted the earth, and your presence moved animals that wouldn't have been moved. You can then choose to say, I am mentally taking my responsibility for that, and then for being aware of my impact. But again, going right back to the beginning of the conversation, it's about saying, until you've had any experience, how can you understand the level of your experience? Do you know what I mean?
So, going into the countryside for a day is better than not going into the countryside for a day.
Yes. But the thing is, going to the countryside for a day is great, but again, it's about the keeper, the site, the way that they introduce you to those things, taking responsibility for helping you understand that. Mm-hmm. And part of that is part of the community values that you profess and perpetuate. So the more you perpetuate, I'm going to helicopter in, shoot, come back, the more that story becomes a story that we tell and tell and tell, that will become the story. And then there's more and more disconnection, and you allow that egotistical thing that keeps you safe to become the story you keep telling, rather than I walked up a big hill with my shotgun and I had a good time. The ways that you run the shoots, the way that I've seen you tell different stories of different shoots and different places, not that you say that some are better or worse, just that there's different stories you tell, are stories that are set up by the keeper, stories that are set up by the estate and the way they run it, and the different stories of place and the different experiences you're having are really important to share. And the way that they run the story of the shooting day is important too.
Okay.
So for example, like even where you have lunch. So I've been to states where they go back and have lunch somewhere else sometimes, so they have it out in the woods, in a clearing, and there's different ways that the stories you're telling, even in your choices there, of how you're connected or not, is important. And I don't necessarily know where people are doing that consciously or subconsciously, but I definitely have seen different ways of doing it.
And there is a better way potentially than
I think there is a better way and a worse way. However, I just think that anything that helps people move back to a connection to what they're doing
is better than not doing
that. And that doesn't need to be something like barefooting in the woods and eating wild greens. It can be bacon and coffee round a fire here with waffles. I mean, that's quite civilized.
Extremely.
But
I'm sat on a chair. It's great.
I know. And so, but that, we're still connected. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't detract from the connection. It just helps people ease in. Next time, full naked, loincloths, eating raw liver, stone tools.
Can we do it in the summer? Is my a warm day.
We can just cut your loincloth shorter for winter and longer for summer.
Suddenly, if everyone wanted partook in that, everyone want to hunt because you'd want all of the furs to keep you warm.
But it is true though, last night, you appreciate the fire more this morning from being cold last night than you did last night before you were cold. And the morning, this fire is just like, oh, I want to sit around it almost reverentially because of the thing you're saying. Imagine that, Sasha, being sat next to this warm fire.
Yeah, boy.
Is it actually really warm?
Oh, it's really warm, mate. It's still kicking out a good amount of heat.
Right. So, any concluders, I suppose, is a thing, and I really have appreciated your opinion, and I hope you guys have too.
Don't be afraid to share what you are, and don't feel a paucity. I'm going to start again when I have a mouthful of waffle. Sorry. I'll make a big point, but it's all going to just be waffle, waffle, waffle.
Oh, I
push
think
not
that
eaten
actually
on.
leaked a bit then. I just did a leaky fart.
Way. Don't let your ego and your fear dictate the way that you share what you are passionate about. I think that translates to quite a lot, especially in the UK. But until you start telling a different story and sharing your experience in a way that's meaningful to people, and telling a different story and sharing the passion and the joy you have as a field sports enthusiast, or someone who just likes nature, and until you're honest enough to share that, like, actually I don't like nature, or I can't just like shooting shit, that's fine. But until you tell your story honestly, until you're vulnerable a little bit, and you're not scared of like thousands of people suddenly enjoying something you enjoy too, and taking away from you, until you've got that poverty mindset out of the shooting community, and out of yourself first, you're gonna keep losing, and you're not going to have as much joy as you could have from sharing that experience in some format with other people and a younger generation. And that doesn't have to be something big. That can just be bacon and coffee in the woods. That can just be cooking a piece of venison with people and telling people the story of where it came from, around a nice dining table in the middle of friggin' Winchester. No, I said friggin' Winchester. In the middle of Winchester.
You hate Winchester. You got something against Winchester right now?
Winchester people? No. Mate, I heard they don't have as good a gun shop as Botley though, right?
They don't have a gun shop anymore, so...
They're not.
Wait.
Jen.
Yeah.
Okay, well that was rubbish. Sorry. So until you can have that dinner around a table in Winchester, and it's just as valid. But you have to share that experience and the fruits of that experience with people.
And not being embarrassed.
And not being embarrassed. Don't be scared. People don't have a problem with taking meat from the landscape. It's so ingrained in that, and it's about the way you share it that they have a problem with, because it innately gets against your chemistry when someone is callous about death or about provision, because there is a whole experience. And if you honor even a fraction of the whole experience, and you allow yourself to feel that and share that a little bit, it will add a lot more to the story. It doesn't have to be like a huge vulnerability and spiritual and there I was in a vision quest and I shot 48 pheasants. It doesn't have to be that. It just has to be that you honestly share your real experience.
No, thank you very much. I mean, your opinion is very valid, and I certainly will take certain aspects of it on board. Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Well,
It's quite a lot to take on.
Yeah.
And
Quite
it
intense
takes a
stuff
while
like this.
to process. But thank you very much for sharing this experience with us, and hope we get to do it again sometime too.
Thanks, man.
Nah, come on, we're gonna have a hug. I feel like a handshake sort of goes against everything we just said.